and recording has been started.
Good morning, our viewers. Welcome to yet another session of Council for Strategic Affairs Roundtable Discussion. My name is Dr. Adityanjee, and I am the President of the Council for Strategic Affairs. We welcome you for this roundtable discussion. Those of you who registered probably saw this flyer at the time of registration. And then we had another flyer, two of our staff people put different flyers just to garner the attention. A little bit about Council for Strategic Affairs before we actually start the roundtable discussion. The Council imparts education in the field of international relations. CSA fosters discussion, dialogue, and debate on geopolitical issues. Council encourages strategic studies in general to raise the level of awareness. Council for Strategic Affairs condemns terrorism in all its forms worldwide. We aim to contribute towards world peace and prosperity. We also promote people-to-people contact and track to diplomacy. For sake of information, CSA is registered as a 501c3 organization with the Internal Revenue Service in the United States. So we are a non-profit organization. Please, people based in US, donate and support the CSA. You have the link here. We hold a monthly roundtable discussion as we are holding. Usually it is on the second Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. Eastern Daytime. We have a monthly guest lecture by a domain expert on the fourth Saturday of each month at 10 a.m. EDT. We have a one-on-one interview session called Strategically Speaking with Dr. Adityanjee. Council organizes symposia, meetings, and conferences. We promote publications of articles on geopolitics and related subjects. We have a summer internship program and a fellowship training program in strategic studies. So let's talk about today's roundtable discussion. For sake of record, today is Saturday, October 12, 2024. The topic of today's discussion is Indo-Pacific challenges and India's strategic capacity and capability. Before I go on to our panelists, just want to make one mention. Last month on September 21st, 2024, we had a distinguished lecture by Dr. Kaush Arha, who has been involved with the United States government in several positions. And the title of that presentation was United States Indian Ocean Strategy. So it is very timely when we talk about Indo-Pacific. After United States, we talk about the challenges in the Indo-Pacific and India's strategic capability and capacity. So we have four distinguished panelists. And I must say that we have a combined wisdom, erudition, and strategic experience of more than 200 years in this high-powered panel. Our distinguished panelists include Lieutenant General Amit Sharma, Lieutenant General Ajai Singh, Major General Amarjit Singh, and Brigadier Arun Sahgal. So I am going to introduce the panelists one by one. Our first panelist is Brigadier Arun Sahgal. And actually, Dr. Arun Sahgal does not need any introduction. I will say only two things. One is that he's a member of the International Advisory Board of the Council for Strategic Affairs, a very respected mentor. And I have no hesitation in saying that he is the Dean of India's strategic thinking. Spanning over last 25 years or so, he has done enormous amount of work. So I'll leave it at that because I want to save time for the panelists. Our second panelist is Lieutenant General Amit Sharma. He has served in the Indian Army for 40 years, held numerous positions and got various decorations. He retired at the rank of Army Commander as the Commander-in-Chief of India's Strategic Command, which is the Nuclear Command. So again, I will keep the introduction to minimum, and we will benefit, we will learn from his experience as the Chief of India's Strategic Command. Our next panelist is Lieutenant General Ajai Singh. Lieutenant General Ajai Singh belongs to an army family, a fifth generation soldier, all of them in cavalry or armored corps. Army has been in the genes for 162 years. He was commissioned in 81th Armored Corps Regiment on December 17, 1983. He has served in Kargil War during Operation Meghdoot. He has served in Angola as United Nations military observer. He has been selected to attend various United Nations courses, and he has written extensively. Again, I'll keep the introduction to minimum. And then our last panelist is Major General Amarjit Singh, who is a cyber security expert, holds a Master of Technology in Computer Sciences from Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur in India, a teacher by profession initially, went into Army, and again, I will keep the introduction to minimum. Those of you who want the introduction can go on to the registration link where everything is in detail. I am very eager to start this panel discussion. Topic is Indo-Pacific challenges and India's strategic capacity and capability. As all of you know, Indo-Pacific is very hot issue with a number of smaller theaters of low-level conflict in this region. I think it is very obvious that the rising hegemon is getting a free ride in the region without being checked. Quadrilateral security dialogue that people talk about has inherent strategic limitations and internal contradictions. The resident powers in the Indo-Pacific region, especially the resident powers in the quadrilateral security dialogue, have conflicting priorities and conflicting interests. In this situation, India has been a de facto security provider in the Indo-Pacific region, not necessarily the only security provider. In case of a conflict, India probably will not be able to rely on any of the resident or non-resident powers. So it is imperative that we assess the security threats and evaluate the strategic capacity and capability of the country on a periodic basis while doing threat assessment and threat perception. So just for our viewers, I'm just going to show a couple of maps of Indo-Pacific region. It's a vast region stretching from India to Pacific. By and large, when the Western audience focuses on Indo-Pacific, they focus mainly on the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, without realizing that there are countries and there are land masses. And any Indo-Pacific conflict also involves the conflict on the landmass. So I'm going to start now inviting the panelists. There are 4 panelists. Each panelist will get 8 minutes to make an opening statement. This will be followed by a moderated discussion and Q&A. So I will request our distinguished panelists to, just focus on their chosen topic for 8 minutes. Some housekeeping rules for our audience. Everyone should remain on mute to avoid noise interference. Please change your cell phone setting to vibration mode. When our esteemed panelists are speaking, please do not try to interrupt them. Only those members of the audience who identify themselves openly will be allowed to ask questions, so there will not be any anonymous questioners. All the questions are moderated through the chat room, so everything has to be sent into the chat room. Please be very specific and precise in asking a question. Don't send lengthy comments in the form of a monologue or a lecture. This program is being recorded. It's being live streamed on our YouTube channel, and it will be available as a content resource on our website. Again, to remind our US-based audience, CSA is registered as a 501c3 organization with the IRS. Please donate and support to CSA. And there is a link for you if you go on our website. So I will stop sharing my PowerPoint. It's my distinct honor and pleasure to invite Brigadier Arun Sahgal, the Dean of India's Strategic Thinking and a member of International Advisory Board of the Council for Strategic Affairs, to initiate this discussion. Welcome, sir. The platform is yours.
Thank you, Adityanjee. I'm not worthy of any of the things which you talk about. I'm just a small analyst who likes to look at developments in the region and try to draw some conclusions for us to think about and contemplate. In my remarks, I'll be covering the overview of the Indo-Pacific challenges and challenges in the land warfare. So there are two separate issues, but I will try to join them together. When we look at Indo-Pacific, Indo-Pacific is divided into two distinct regions. One is the East Asia and Southeast Asia, and second is the IOR. I want to give a clarification from the beginning that our understanding of Indo-Pacific is different from the understanding of the United States government, or as they contemplate on the Indo-Pacific related to their Pacific Command. For us, Indo-Pacific extends right up to the east coast of Africa. And that's the region that we are talking about. So when we're talking about Indian Ocean region, the vastness of the Indian Ocean region is as much as the vastness of the Pacific region, a fact that is somehow overlooked in our discussions. Now, it's absolutely correct. The area is riddled with tensions. There is a major competition in multiple domains taking place. There's a military competition, there's a technological competition, and there is an economic competition that is taking place. But when we look at the East and Southeast Asia, we are looking at two contending blocks trying to enforce their influence. On one side is a collective security architecture which is being carved out by the United States along with its alliance partners. Who are these? This is the Republic of Korea, Japan, Australia, and incrementally Philippines. The whole idea is to strengthen this architecture to prevent Chinese assertions in the Taiwan Strait, and also to prevent Chinese to get out of the containment that is created by the first island change through the Bohai Channel and the other channels next to Philippines and the Taiwan. The whole idea basically is, as far as the United States is concerned, is total military dominance of this area and to constrain Chinese in the region. Chinese, on the other hand, are trying to the second element of this thing is the West is also trying to develop security architectures beyond this bilateral and multilateral arrangement that they have got together. There is this whole issue of this Asian NATO, which is being talked about by Prime Minister Shiga. See, the question of while the whole issue is of Asian NATO has been played down, there is no takers, but there is an intrinsic rationale behind it. The intrinsic rationale is driven by the fact is that these countries are not conjoined by any military alliance, but they are simply strategic partners. On the other hand, all of these countries, Republic of Korea, Australia, Japan, have huge economic stakes in China. So when we are looking at these states, and they are trying to operate in this vacuum, the question basically comes about is this: how will they play the game in the backdrop of Chinese assertions? Now that is the issue that comes into play. When we look at the capacity building, etc., the AUKUS issue comes into play. People ad lib talk about AUKUS, but please remember, whatever happens to AUKUS will happen after 2035. For the next 15 years, nothing is going to happen to AUKUS. Apart from the fact is that the patrols by the American nuclear submarines and other deployments will increase over a period of time. But that is something which has got nothing to do with AUKUS, but in terms of capacity building. Of course, there are new technological arrangements and other issues are being discussed and sorted out amongst themselves. Now, look at on the other side what the Chinese are doing. Chinese have got the anti-access strategy. In the last 2 years, or ever since, or last year and a half, ever since Pelosi's visit, there has been huge amount of assertions by the Chinese, all kinds of assertions, blockades, all have been tried out by the Chinese, all as a part of a process to plan, get ready, and should the push comes to shove, to be able to execute their operational plans. That's issue one. They are also developing a credible anti-access area denial strategies, which is in enhanced reaches. So the situation as far as China is concerned is that China is very clear that if there is any offensive opportunity or where the force has to be leveraged, it is not going to be Taiwan alone. It will be a joint application of force astride the first island chain, which is the Taiwan going down to Japan and on to Philippines, and also the Guam and the areas where the major of the American assets are located. So it's going to be a messy kind of an affair. So when we are looking at a threat scenario from in this region, any conflict in this going to be a very, very escalatory conflict, and this is going to transcend the conventional domain. This brings me to the second point: is the issue of extended deterrence. There's an issue which is being talked about. The Koreans are talking about developing capacities. There is an undercurrent, not openly stated, of if Korea goes nuclear, then of course Japan will have to go to nuclear. Then the Japanese Prime Minister Ishiba again has talked about the fact is that it's not good enough to assure us a deterrence. We want you to deploy nuclear weapons in on the continental or the boundary of it, or the territory of Japan, something which the Japanese would never allow. If you recollect, Japanese would not even allow a nuclear tipped missiles deployed on the American ships to come into Japan. But those things are changing. China is not alone in dealing with this issue. There is a new sort of a grouping which is emerging called the CRINC. The CRINC is China, Russia, Iran, North Korea. But in this place, it is CR, China, Russia, and North Korea, which are on operation. Last month only, they had a major exercise. 400 sorties were flown over Japan. So these guys are also pushing their agenda. Russia has entered into an agreement with North Korea. China is not very comfortable with that, but it as a part of a strategy of dissuasive deterrence vis-a-vis the United States, it is working on that issue. So this is the story as far as the East Asia and Southeast Asia are concerned. Southeast Asia, unfortunately, are caught up in this, with Philippines breaking ranks from the ASEAN centrality, more or less. There is now a new I mean, they are grappling with the idea as to how do we manage the security aspects. Uh, Currently speaking, Indonesia and the other players are very clear they don't want to get involved in the mess up that's going to happen. But the problem that they face is there will be a collateral damage if there is an escalation. And how do they secure themselves in that collateral damage scenario? Okay, now we come to India. As far as India is concerned, China remains the central challenge. Although our foreign minister is talking about 75% of resolution, the NSA had a good meeting with Wang Yi, etc., etc. There are enough talks currently on. I mean, there's enough uh, sort of this thing is being talked about the fact that we are closer to resolution of the boundary dispute. But the reality is that Chinese are talking with the forked tongue. As I speak to you, there are discussions going on under the WMCC arrangement with Chinese to to sort out some kind of an agreement on this thing, on the boundary issue, so that the idea basically is, as my understanding goes, picking up from the grapevine, is that at the BRICS summit, on the sideline of the BRICS summit in Kansa, there could be a meeting between the Prime Minister and Xi to bring the tensions down. But the reality of the situation lies is like this, that Chinese are occupying the ridge lines in all the areas where they have come in. 25 out of the 77 patrolling points have been denied to us. We have lost close to about 2,000 square kilometers of territory. All the patrolling areas are being dominated by the Chinese, and we talk about saying that if we cannot patrol in those buffer zones, so can not the Chinese. Chinese don't have to patrol those buffer zones because Chinese are sitting on higher ground and they can see a lot. So the situation is basically is this. For India, an improvement in relationship with China would essentially mean if we can resolve the Depsang issue. Depsang is the key to this whole Eastern Ladakh situation. And if we cannot solve it or we try to push it around, then it will at best will be a limited sort of an improvement in our relations. Now you were talking to me about the land warfare threats. 4.5 years down the line, infrastructure build up, huge amount of infrastructure build up, firing ranges coming close to you. Now we are seeing another element of a huge amount of deployment coming forward. So the situation is very clear that the Chinese can have the capacity of launching local or a little higher than local attacks at a place of their own choosing. But my personal view is China will maintain pressure but will not escalate to breaking the sanctity of no fire or not resorting to kinetic force between each other. It doesn't suit them. The second front scenario that people talk about is a Shamaria. It's not going to happen. It's not an issue with the Chinese. Chinese can manage this issue. So the bottom line, as far as the Chinese are concerned, they are going to continue to push pressure on us, push people forward into those new villages that have been created, which basically, incidentally, is a very interesting concept. They don't have to deploy forces in front. They have just pushed the people over there who acts their eyes and ears. And from them, they get all the information and they provide them with technological resources, period. So what we have to understand is what is the Chinese strategy and how do we counter that? By continuing to deploy forces in large numbers, putting men and material and machinery on top, we are losing close to 1.5 and 2% of our GDP. And that is a cost which the Chinese have imposed on us. Can Chinese bear the cost? Please do not go by this propaganda. The Chinese are losing out, their economy is suffering, etc., etc. Please try and understand the economy is a 70 to 18 trillion dollar economy which is suffering. Not a 3 or 4 trillion dollar economy which is suffering. But it is the difference between $3 trillion economy suffering a 2% GDP drop versus a $18 trillion economy was suffering a 4% GDP drop. Doesn't matter to them. But particularly from the security perspective, we are talking about security issues over here. So I like to stop here. I know before you take me, I stop here and I'll get into comments whenever they are. Thank you. Sorry for taking a little longer time, but I just thought I'd give a broader picture.
Good timing.
Okay. Let me invite Lieutenant General Amit Sharma as our next panelist. Sir, the platform is yours. And just to remind, he was the Chief of India's Strategic Command, aka Nuclear Command. So let's hear from Lieutenant General Amit Sharma. Welcome, sir.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Adityanjee. In fact, it's a privilege to speak after Brigadier Sahgal, who's been our guru for years and years. I've been asked to speak on the nuclear dynamics in the Indo-Pacific region. And like Brigadier Sahgal said, it's a much larger region for us. So in addition to the Indo-Pacific, as we understand, I shall also be talking a bit about India and its neighborhood. I'll talk basically in the next 8 minutes about three things. One is the larger picture, the nuclear paradigm in the entire region. Then secondly, a word about China and Pakistan. And lastly, about India, our thought process and our capabilities. Now, as far as the region is concerned, out of the 9 nuclear weapon powers that we have in the world, there is a footprint of 7 nuclear powers in the region. That's India, China, Pakistan, you have Israel, then you have Russia, North Korea, and United States because of its extended responsibilities. In addition to that, you have some new nuclear powers which are likely to come up, if not in the short term, but at least in some years from now. That is Iran, which could go nuclear any day. Brigadier Sahgal mentioned about South Korea. South Korea, as per their own polls, over 70% people in South Korea want their government to have their own nuclear weapons. Japan was also touched upon, and Japan, at the moment, they're not talking of own nuclear weapons, but they want to be under the nuclear umbrella. In addition to that, we have Australia, which is a part of AUKUS. And with the United States and the UK collaboration, they're going in for SSNs, submersible, the nuclear-powered submarines. Now, at some stage, if they want to convert these SSNs into SSBNs also, that also remains a possibility. So the ground reality is that we are in the most nuclearized region of the world. And some of the powers that be in this region are definitely not very responsible. So we are sitting in, I won't say it's an explosive nuclear thing, but yes, we are in a nuclearized region where powers like North Korea, Pakistan, as far as we are concerned, are definitely rather unpredictable. A word about China and Pakistan. First about Pakistan. Pakistan went nuclear in the late 80s with help from China and North Korea, though officially they declared themselves a nuclear power in 1998, immediately after India. 4 points about Pakistan. One, their nuclear weapons are purely anti-India. 2, they have a nuclear deterrent, which is fairly large, and as per CIPRI, they have about 170 nuclear weapons. It is a beg, borrow, steal program helped by others. But today they have full spectrum deterrent capability. That means they're talking about TNWs, Hataf with about 70 odd kilometers range, to the Shaheen 3, which goes up to about 2750 to 3000 kilometers, and which they feel they can cover India completely, which is fine. They have a triad of sorts. They're trying to get the diesel electric submarines to be carrying nuclear weapons. If they succeed so far, they have land-based vectors and sea-based vectors. Pakistan does not have a clear-cut nuclear doctrine. Whatever Dr. Khalid Kidwai says in various forums suddenly becomes their nuclear doctrine. Also, another important point to note about Pakistan is that although they say that their nuclear weapons come under the political authority, we all know that Pakistan nuclear weapons are controlled by the army chief, which again makes it a little more dangerous. But at the same time, I would say Pakistan army is a very professional army, and whatever they might say, they're not very loose about the use of nuclear weapons because as professionals, they understand what the repercussions can be. I now skip to China. China went nuclear in 1964 after they'd been threatened on the nuclear dimension by Americans in the Korean War. Their stated policy is to transform the People's Army into a world-class army by the middle of the century. That means another 10 to 15 years from now. At the moment, they feel that they're not really up to the mark and they're waiting to be a global power, which includes the nuclear dimension also. They already have about 500 odd nuclear weapons as per given by CIPRI, and they have a triad of SSBNs. They have airdropped weapons carried by bombers and land-based missiles, which are mobile launchers as well as silos. They have a stated doctrine of no first use and a policy of credible minimum deterrence. They feel that they're not in the race for using nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons, they feel, are only for deterrence. But like was brought out earlier, China says something, and whether what time the intentions can change can be very fast. What matters is what the capabilities are, and the capabilities are growing at a very fast pace. Today it is 500. It is assessed that by the end of this decade, it should be touching about 1,000, and thereafter a little more. But the point to be remembered is that China is building up a credible minimum deterrent posture, keeping the United States in mind, the NATO nuclear powers, and also Russia, which for the moment is a friend of convenience, but they've never been friends. So China is talking of 3 or 4, nuclear powers, which each have about 5,000 weapons each. So at the moment, if you compare China's 500 or 1,000 with about 10 to 12,000 nuclear weapons, I still feel it's not a no first use level. It's still a credible minimum deterrent posture. But China's nuclear dimension has a direct effect on India. China and Pakistan are two all-weather friends, and Pakistan is aided and abetted by Pakistan with China. Now, as China grows its numbers, the Indian policy is given out in a nuclear doctrine, which has 8 points, the 3 operative ones being a credible minimum deterrent posture, a no first use policy, and a policy of massive retaliation to inflict unacceptable damage. So with numbers of China and Pakistan growing, we have no option but to increase our numbers, as also the quality of our arms and the nuclear triad. A word about our triad. We have a triad. That means C vectors. We have 2 SSBNs at the moment, and we're going in for more. We have air-launched or air-carried weapons, as long as we have ballistic missiles, ground-launched, ranges going from about 700 to 5,000 plus, 5,000 plus being the Agni 5, which as per news report, it also has MIRV capabilities. So we are trying to maintain a posture of credible minimum deterrence. And like I said, it is a dynamic figure. We need to keep changing. We have to improve our technology and numbers based on what China and Pakistan are doing. A word about, again, the capabilities. Our nuclear weapons are under the command and control of an organization called the Strategic Forces Command, which is a Tri-Services Command, and the CNC commands all 3 vectors. The chain of command is very clear. The SFC through the CDS now functions under the political council headed by the Prime Minister of India. With this, I'd like to stop here. I think I've touched my 8 minutes or so. And after that, we can discuss in the question answer session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed, Lieutenant General Amit Sharma, for enlightening us on current dynamics of the nuclear threat in the Indo-Pacific region. I'm going to invite now Lieutenant General Ajai Singh. For our viewers, Lieutenant General Ajai Singh was commander of the Andaman and Nicobar which is now a tri-service command. I think that has been called a stationary aircraft carrier of India. So let's hear from Lieutenant General Ajai Singh. What are his viewpoints on the threat perception and capabilities and capacity building? Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Adityanjee. It's the first time I've come to your panel and grateful for the invite, especially amongst such distinguished panelists. I heard an observation in the beginning that a rising hegemon is getting a free ride in the region. What I would like to share is it's an observation that the region we are talking of is a global commons. It is something which belongs to everyone in the world. And therefore, if any status quo is changing in this region, it's a cause for concern for anyone who may believe in the institutions of world governance which have prevailed since the Second World War and have held the peace, so to say, since the Second World War. I'd like to make 3 quick points within my time. One is some general points which pertain to what we are discussing. India's interest in the region we are talking about, and some points going forward as we see, we've had learned panelists already speaking about issues in the region. Some general points, if you take a step back, the status quo is changing and we see some changes in place. And like General Amit just mentioned, intentions can change very quickly, but capabilities take time to build up. So it is these changing capabilities which tell their own story. Am I making capabilities for trade? Am I making capabilities for protection of the seas? Or am I making capabilities which threaten the other stakeholders in the region? I do remember reading sometime one of the Chinese senior people saying that India should remember that Indian Ocean is not India's ocean. And the first thought which came to mind is that the South China Sea is neither China's sea either. And what is of concern to anyone, it doesn't matter if you're in the region, but if it is the institutions of state which are holding the world governance which are being respected, whether you have the United Nations, International Court of Justice, World Trade Organization, IMF, Maritime Organization, whatever, then we cannot cherry pick and decide that this is okay for us and this is not. I will take all the benefits of being a WTO member, but I will not listen to an International Court of Justice decision so far as 9-line is concerned. Because if you start doing that, then other people in the region will sit up and take note. And as we take note, yes, with the economies growing, and growth is inevitable, aspirations would also be commensurate to it. But is this growth benign or is it a threat to anyone? To my mind, issues going forward on the new battlefields would be revolving around 2, economies and technology. That's all I think in the larger view. The second point is India's interests. We want to look at developments in our neighborhood, status quos which are changing, capabilities which are being put into place. We would like to do that. And what do we see when we look at it? I was just jotting some points while the previous speaker was speaking. We see outside powers making inroads into our region, which was benign so far. We never coveted the neighbor's wife. We never coveted any other extraneous interests. We believed in peaceful growth. I mean, we've seen articulations of our Honorable Prime Minister, our national policy, which has continued. And then we see the Belt and Road Initiative coming. And I mean, shortly completing my PhD on the subject, I have no doubt it is a form of debt trap diplomacy, which is getting dovetailed into strategic aspirations, and it's telling a picture of its own. There are new capabilities being developed in the region, and extraneous pressures presence which we are talking of are Chinese deployment. The 45th, last October, we had the 45th anti-piracy escort force coming in. Since when do you need submarines for anti-piracy escort? Since when do you need landing ships? So these are cause for concern. Since when have you decided that you want Hambantota as part of your debt trap swapping with the Sri Lankans? Djibouti was already there. You've caught Pakistan where it hurts, and suddenly there's talk of Gwadar falling into your pocket in the manner of Hambantota. And you don't pump oil against gravity, despite whatever else you may say. But at Chakfu, on the Myanmar side, you are putting in different capabilities, and you're protecting those capabilities where 26% of your gas and 16% of your oil are already being pumped to Chengdu. You're putting in submarine bases. You're putting in, you already have airstrip at Coco Islands. So these were from people who are analyzing, military analysts, they are all telling a story. And then with this comes the jingoism on the Himalayas and the saber rattling with Taiwan. And the maritime, right? You can have aspiration, you feel for your need, you have a bigger navy in place. But what about the maritime flotilla, which has got double reinforced hulls? Yes, you have progressed from a brown water navy to a blue water navy. You've got longer sea legs. But when these capabilities which are developed are looked at together and the intents don't seem so benign, it's something which the powers in the region would sit up and take notice. And with that, I come to the third point. What are the points we look at going forward? I just pulled up some slides. I don't know how we start sharing them. I saw how to do that earlier. I'll just request your help a little again, sir. What was...
Yes, sir, it's the central button.
Oh, yeah, it's the central one. Okay, I just pulled together some of these slides. I wonder if you could see this. Yes.
Yes.
You are seeing the one with the island chains?
It's, if you can change it to single slide mode instead of the entire content.
Okay.
Yes, now we can see.
I don't want to give subtitles a try. Sorry for that. It's on my time in any case. So we've already heard Brigadier Sahgal speak about the island chain. Someone has even talked of a third island chain, a fourth island chain. But as we look at the region, and we heard about the Indo-Pacific and India's understanding of the Indo-Pacific. Go to the next slide, which extends up to the east coast of Africa. If you see right of India, I've put that hashod areas which are the 826 islands of the Andaman and Nicobar Island chain. We've seen our Look East policy, our Act East policy, and security and growth in the region for everyone. These are enunciations of our Prime Minister. But when we look at our Himalayan region, we have seen the issues of the Doklam intrusion, the issues of intrusion on the Himalayas, and in East Ladakh. And we look at areas having been ceded illegally by Pakistan to China. And we look at areas now occupied forcibly when there was a status quo pertaining. All these cause us cause for concern. And now, if I look at the sea lanes of communication, this is International Maritime Organization data. So the top left slide, which I put together, in this mosaic of slides, you will see where the red lines converge close to the southern part of the island chains of Andaman and Nicobar is the Malacca Strait. It goes down towards Singapore. And the successive states, the other crossing points which your speaker spoke of, Sunda, Lombok, Sumba, Mumbai, and Vitar. Each of them, east to west, is a 3-day extra turnaround time in terms of shipping costs. With the volume of ships passing, it would be a roughly $3 billion worth of diesel extra per year for the ships passing through. I'm not getting into the figures of how much percent of oil and how much percent of what is passing through in these areas, but the Belt and Road Initiative and the significance of these islands tell their own story. And when we look at the BRI initiative, and I spoke about Myanmar and these areas and the militarization of the areas around Chakfu, which has tonnages greater than New York Harbor, which are being put into place, it causes us concern. And when we look at China and the China Park Economic Corridor, we look at issues where there's a debt trap inexorably in place. You cannot pay back the cost of the agreements which have been put in at very high rates of interest. The coal which has been guaranteed, when you're not having billing obtaining and the government is guaranteeing it, there are economic issues which are going to come up. So having brought that out, I mean, that's all so far as the slides are concerned. Do I get back onto whatever else? Yeah.
Kindly stop sharing the slides.
I was just trying to, yeah. Thank you. So having said that, There are issues. We have capabilities which can be developed. Someone mentioned in the beginning about unsinkable aircraft carrier. If aircraft carriers could do something, we did have the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard with us at the Andamans. It was a great foresight after the Kargil Review Committee. The present Foreign Minister's father, Dr. Subramaniam, who put it in place and who recommended this integrated theatre command concept. So when we do look at all the issues, so far as the islands are concerned, there are capabilities which can be put into place, which can in turn ensure the greater maintenance of those institutions of world governance which guarantees peace and security for everyone in the region. I'm sure all those people who are aware of the issues we are speaking of, and it is not about Navy and Air Force and Coast Guard or whatever else. It's about integrated capability development, along with other partners the government may find appropriate, to just ensure that the region remains a hub of peaceful trade. I think that's all I'd like to bring out. The rest we can discuss in question answer sessions.
Thank you very much indeed, Lieutenant General Ajai Singh. Before I go on to my next speaker, to our friends who are currently sitting in India, I just want to make, as moderator, use my prerogative and make a declarative statement. There's nothing like South China Sea. What you have is South Champa Sea, you have North Natuna Sea, and you have West Philippine Sea. Let's change the terminology. So that is what we have to do to change the narrative. And now it's my honor and pleasure to invite Major General Amarjit Singh, who will talk about cybersecurity and issues involved in the Indo-Pacific challenges and what should be India's response and capability. Welcome, sir. Kindly unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, please.
Thank you very much, sir. First time in this forum. It's a privilege. I also want to acknowledge having worked with all the panelists and outstanding professionals in their areas. But more important is, as you said, Brigadier Sahgal is a pioneer in strategic sphere in India, but I want to highlight he is also the pioneer in a field called net assessment in India. And we've worked together a lot in those areas. So I'm kind of expanding my brief that was given, considering everything is going strategic. I'm bringing it down to the military level. Cybersecurity is a very small part of what we are looking at today in terms of challenges in Asia Pacific. The biggest difference from, let's say, 10 years back is the speed of technological change is a huge dynamic which was never understood. So strategy is one thing, politics is one thing, but now there is a huge technology dimension which is permeating everything. And so I would, with your permission, just run through a few slides which says what is the scope of the problem we are dealing with, and maybe later on we can go on to some things. So I just
kindly share your PowerPoint, please.
I am sharing that, sir. Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so let's you see, when we say technology is coming up in a big way, the Americans have been talking of, we've talked of RMA, the Russians talked of military technical revolution. Those are very early days for those terms. The speed of changes, what we have, and the dimensions of change are very different. So I'm very lucky that General Ajai already introduced the concept of so many domains. And I mean, nothing better than the Andaman Nicobar clan, command that he commanded for the whole manifestation of multi-domain warfare. Now, what are those domains? So, we've always said there's land warfare, maritime, sea, but now space, we've known about space for long. Cyberspace is fantastic now, but there is an information domain which is kind of riding over all of these. And so now we go down, there's hardware domain, but nobody thought that there will be attacks and defenses at the hardware level, they are there now. Software is a domain. Artificial intelligence is increasingly a domain. So the whole point here is, when you are talking of capabilities, there are too many things to think of, too many uncertainties and variables have come up now. Now, let's look at that. What is the Chinese view of, multi-domain warfare? They have articulated it very strongly. Is it deterrence? Is it, putting their viewpoint across for others to understand? But they're also implementing it. So for what the Americans call multi-domain warfare, they call multi-domain precision warfare. And none of this is unknown to us. We've talked of hybrid warfare, so many things, but eventually when you come down to the military domain, it is about being precise, but it's not only about military systems. You are targeting commanders. You are targeting the decision-making process. And there is too many developments happening here in all the countries. Okay, so the two most important things, which I think as a country, we have been underestimating, but Chinese and Russians, they have understood the value of long-term cognitive domain. That means where populations think, where people think, where political parties think. And we already knew the target, the commander, but we are now going to targeting many other people who are part of this decision. And integrated network electronic warfare. You see, this electronic dimension has many domains. Cyber, space, everything is electronic, it is data flows. So even in cognitive domain, we can, leverage the technical features to do cognitive warfare, which we didn't have. And have the Chinese focused on this tremendously? I would imagine that they are focused on this far more than any of the competition they have. Okay, so I'll not go to the United States, but although they started these things, they have their own challenges because, they are operating out of their home base, and the way they operate is going to be very different. Chinese who are, in their own area. And then what about India? If I do a SWOT analysis for you, there are tremendous strengths in terms of our inherent abilities. And I'm not going to comprehensive national power, young population, the ability to, bring out trained manpower, which other people cannot do because we have population. But even if I go to opportunities, because if the Chinese have become aggressive in assertion, and there is a word that everybody is using and we are using is called resilience. Resilience against adversary pressure on you leads to so many other things. So this is tremendous opportunity that India was not leveraging few years back, but we are leveraging very well now. We are leveraging our opportunities. If you see supply chains, if you see semiconductors, if you see artificial intelligence, everything, are we able to kind of operationalize that? That is a different matter. But inherent capabilities, do we have opportunities and strengths? Absolutely. And I think in the last 10 years, we have shown tremendous dynamism in this area. Now, there are uncertainties that you have to recognize. I will not tread in the area of the strategic speakers who preceded me because it's, they are better informed on these things. I'm just saying there are technology in military and technology in the civil domain. The fusion of civil and military domain, these leading to too many uncertainties that we have to study, and we have to prepare not for one outcome, we have to prepare for many outcomes. So I would just like to say, we have a very wonderful framework which Brigadier Sahgal has been leading in the country, saying, okay, what are the scenarios that we can think of and in what directions could it go? And we should be planning for each of the scenarios and we shouldn't get surprised. So I'm not going to take too much of a time, but there is a US-China strategic rivalry, which is a very important factor, and it can assume many values. So also the Chinese trajectory, it can assume many values. You're aware, China has got such a serious internal challenges coming up, population not growing, the gaps between the coastal elites and the rural areas, fringes, what is happening. But more important, the economic problems. China has got a massive debt issue. So somebody is to say they'll become very assertive in 1 year. Well, that's a possibility if the party is seen to be under threat by Xi. On the other hand, they have tremendous internal problems to deal with. And if you're able to kind of work with this, there's nothing coming up and you will have time to build your capabilities. I'm trying to bring out the variations that are possible. Again, we have many options how you wish to proceed, and you may change course in 2 to 3 years depending upon how things are observing. So I'll just leave it to that. This is my last slide. Technology is going to create new scenarios and challenges which we have never even thought of, and now they are emerging so rapidly. You're coming with autonomous weapon systems, you're coming with agentic things, you're coming with generative artificial intelligence, which is a powerful weapon for cognitive warfare, as we've already seen. So I'll just leave it at that. The idea is that you have to understand the domain, you have to observe, you have to, like somebody said, it is about capabilities, it's not only about intentions. And capabilities is a portfolio. You have to do a portfolio-based capability plan, and you have to prioritize those depending upon how the scenarios are emerging. I'll leave it at that, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Major General Amarjit Singh. Kindly stop sharing your PowerPoint. I see that there are a number of questions in the chat room, but before I go to the questions from the chat room, I see two very experienced people in the audience, and I would like to draw impromptu on their experience, professional military experiences to this topic. So if they don't mind, I'm going to first invite Air Commodore Manmohan Chaturvedi, who is in the audience. Dr. Manmohan Chaturvedi, would you like to make some comments based upon your own experience from the Air Force and other areas, especially the cyber issues that you have been working on? You can take the platform, you can turn your video on and give your comments, please, sir.
I can. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Actually, I was listening with a very intense interest with the presentation given by all the panelists, and more so Dr. Amarjit Singh's mention about cyber areas. This has been an interest to me. Actually, I have been working in the headquarters and various locations, and during NDC also, my thesis was on the cyber information warfare. And rightly so, the value of information warfare, unlike the cyber part, which is just a element below, I would say, information warfare is a very all-encompassing issue, and that cognitive and being aided by artificial intelligence, regenerative artificial intelligence, it makes the picture very complex. And it is not trivial really to analyze. There are professionals who need to work on that, and of course, multi-domain approaches will be required. I'll only say I'm very glad to hear that, and all the points which have been raised by Dr. Amarjit Singh are relevant, and they certainly need a very detailed and effective consideration. I'll be too happy to contribute. Maybe I would like to connect with Dr. Amarjit Singh. You can kindly reach out somehow, or my email is available with the group. So I'll be very happy to know. My association has been with IIT Delhi, where from I did my PhD in 2013, I defended. And I've been working on various projects connected with cybersecurity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi. Thank you for giving your comments. I'm going to invite actually Commodore Ranjit Rai. Commodore Ranjit Rai, based upon your naval career, and experience, would you like to speak a few words on the Indo-Pacific challenges and India's capabilities and capacity? Commodore Ranjit Rai, please. Sir, are you there? Commodore Ranjit Rai? Kindly unmute yourself, sir. You are muted. You are still muted, sir. Kindly unmute yourself. Sir, you are on mute. Please unmute yourself. Sir, unmute yourself. Commodore, yeah. We are having some technical challenges. We can't hear Commodore Ranjit Rai.
He is still muted. Commodore Ranjit Rai, please unmute. We can't hear you at all. You're still muted. I think now you're unmuted. Now you're unmuted, I think. Please try to speak now. We can't still hear him.
I think we'll have to sort of move on. Commodore Rai, we cannot hear you, so we're moving on. So I will start taking some of the questions that have been put in the chat room and start with some of the questions that I have in mind based upon some of the presentations that have been made. So first of all, the first question I'll ask Brigadier Arun Sahgal. Brigadier Sahgal, you did mention about the quote-unquote Asian NATO mentioned by Prime Minister Ishiba of Japan. Whenever we talk about this concept of Asian NATO, we are talking about an oxymoron. You know, you're talking about Asia and then you're talking about NATO, and you don't realize that there's a history, something called the so-called Manila Pact or SEATO, Southeast Asia Treaty Organization, that died its own natural death. Looking at the complexity of the Indo-Pacific region, would any kind of security arrangement that resembles SEATO or whatever you call Asian NATO, would that be workable in the current context?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You know, I'm not labeling issues. We don't want to call it Asian NATO, we want to call it this or that. But there is a critical problem. The critical problem basically is this. The driver of security in East and Southeast Asia is the United States. United States is a paramount power in the region, and who's going to do the most heavy lifting in this region? The question which faces the leaderships of Japan, Australia, even Korea, and to some extent even the Philippines and the other Southeast Asian countries is how committed is going to be the United States in fighting the war in Indo-Pacific, where its economic interests are going down, and it is getting deeply involved in Ukraine. It is a no-ending war. There's things going on in Gaza. The budgets are coming down. The levels of procurements are coming down. The weapon systems are not adequate. The question that faces everybody is this: can this loose arrangement that exists today is credible to deal with the Chinese challenge? I am conscious of the fact that our our leadership have said that we are not happy with the idea of Asian NATO, etc., etc. That something is okay. That's a separate issue. But I'm talking about conceptually, how do you put these varying powers with varying capacities and capabilities to fight a common challenge, or under what purposes and under what construct? That's my big issue. As far as India is concerned, okay, I will stop here, but if you want to ask India, I'll talk about India separately.
Okay. Okay, you can conclude, sir. You can conclude.
Okay, so bottom line basically is that it's not a question of Asian NATO. We keep, when we have our discussions with the Japanese, we have our discussions with the Americans, we are always talking about a security architecture. As things stands today, the United States security architecture does not include Indian Ocean region, and for that purposes, India is a standalone power. India will have to handle its own challenges. Things were honky-dory till about a couple of years back. As the Chinese naval capacities increase and Chinese interests increase, and China becomes a $23 trillion economy, and it requires trade and other energy and other flows increase, they are going to have a come out party into the Indian Ocean region. The way we are trying to build up capacities and capabilities, nothing is going to be on the floor or visible till 2030, 2035. 2030 is too early, 2035. So what we are talking about is the interim period. How do we secure our interests? What's our threat mitigation strategies? You don't want to call it NATO, you don't want to call this. And here again another problem occurs. The problem is United States does not look at China challenge from our perspective. Our perspective is China challenge is a local challenge. We can handle it. We have been talking to them. We'll talk, prepare, and etc. deal with it. But when it comes to maritime challenge, it's going to be a whole new ball game. And that's something which I do not think we are ready. We need to think about it. And as far as East Asia is concerned, I just talked about the fact that the coordinated, how do you have a coordinated response to deal with China? That's the bottom line. Thank you.
Thank you, Brigadier Sahgal. My next question is addressed to Lieutenant General Amit Sharma. Lieutenant General Sharma, you did mention that China at this point in time has 500 nuclear weapons per CIPRI data. The same CIPRI sources say that China is likely to have at least 1,000 nuclear weapons by 2030. And the same CIPRI data mentioned a figure of 172 for India. Now, there's no need actually to match weapon by weapon, but Chinese stance has been that they will keep on increasing their nuclear assets till they are at parity with United States and Russia. Keeping that in mind, what should be India's nuclear doctrine? The question is for Lieutenant General Amit Sharma.
Right. See, like I said, for China, the bigger threat is United States, as also Russia, because they've never been really friends. And China is pitching itself as a global power. Now, we are caught in between because do we enter into an arms race with China? Is it worth it? Or we continue with a posture of a credible minimum deterrence posture, but which implies how much? Today at 170, 180, whatever the figures might be, is that sufficient or is it not? The point is that can any country afford to absorb a nuclear strike? And the answer is obviously no. What we saw in Hiroshima and Nagasaki was 20 kilotons, 15 kilotons, and here we're talking about 200, 300 kilotons and more. Do we need to match up to China? In the sense that if you're talking of a 1500, the CIPRI is also given a figure of 1500 after about 10 years. But they are talking of 1,500 against America's 5,000 plus. About 500 to 600 with France and UK. As also Russia, which is again 5,000 plus. So when they are pitching themselves against these three, we should be adequately prepared that, look, in case, and China's again a no first use power at the moment. And they've given it categorically. And I feel even Russia today, when you see when people are talking, they'll use nuclear weapons and all that. My assessment is that Russia will not use nuclear weapons, including tactical nuclear weapons. Coming back to India, like I said, your credible minimum deterrent posture is a very dynamic figure. You don't have to match weapon for weapon, but you must have adequate weapons that if a push comes to shove and somebody launches a strike on you, you'll be capable of absorbing a strike, which is a tough call. But at the same time, if you're capable of hitting back, the strike on you will not come. So numbers don't count. Our triad has to be dynamic in terms of quantity and quality. Quality is equally important. As long as we can have a posture and China feels that we can hit back after absorbing a strike or whatever be it, I think we are okay. We should not be matching numbers to numbers because we are not looking at USA or Russia, but China is looking. So our threat perceptions are totally different. So we've got to go by our own threat perceptions and come to a figure which is good enough for our own safety. I'll stop here.
General Sharma, I have a supplementary question. We have to address in Indo-Pacific the challenge coming from the rising hegemon, and you very beautifully explained the threat, nuclear threat from China. But we forget that on the western flank, there's a country, and you did mention General Khalid Kidwai, who has openly come to United States and said that we will use tactical nuclear weapons against India. So that is the only declared nuclear power that is insisting on first use of nuclear weapons in any eventuality. And my question is, do we still need to stick to NFU doctrine? Indo-Pacific challenges are not just from China. We have other adversaries also.
Right. Pakistan, like I said, that's why I covered Pakistan initially. And Pakistan is aided and abetted by China. And like I said, they have no doctrine, but at the drop of a hat, they talk of using tactical nuclear weapons. You see, this is a never-ending discussion. There are two sides of a coin, but I'll give you my personal opinion. If there are two boxers and one guy says, I'll hit you, but he knows that the other person can hit back much harder, he'll think twice before hitting him first. This is a very simple analogy. Our doctrine is very clear. We maintain a credible minimum deterrent posture, a no first use, but a response to a nuclear attack on Indian territory or Indian forces anywhere, now anywhere is the buzzword, will invite massive retaliation to inflict unacceptable damage. Is any country or Pakistan prepared to take the risk? We've had a lot of discussion. If they use a TNW, would be ethically correct to use a larger weapon? Even the American Senate has repeatedly said that there is no such thing as a small nuclear weapon or a large nuclear weapon. The red line is using a nuclear weapon. So our doctrine is very clear. If Pakistan uses a tactical nuclear weapon against Indian forces on their own soil or on India, our answer is massive retaliation. And if Pakistan wants to take the risk, I guess it's a very clearly stated doctrine. They're welcome to take a risk at their own cost. So I don't think we need to, get into a war fighting capability because look, even we are capable of making tactical nuclear weapons. Our 98 explosions of 0.1, 0.2 kilotons. So we are adequate and we can use our Prithvis, etc. to use the weapons. So making is not the point. It's a question of the policy. If they are talking of using tactical nuclear weapons, why should we go down to the level and say we will also use tactical nuclear weapons? We're saying go ahead, use it, but be prepared for the consequences. And if you cross the red line of using a nuclear weapon, nobody in the world is going to support you. If you, a taboo has been maintained for 75 years, 78 years now. If somebody wants to break it at his own risk, I think we should be prepared to hit back and hit back hard. If we are prepared to do that and we convey that, I'm sure they'll not use tactical nuclear weapons against us. This is my personal take on it.
Thank you very much indeed for a brilliant reply.
Dr. Adityanjee, I'm now unmuted. If you can hear me, I can come in.
Yeah, we can hear you, and please take your time.
Well, first I must wish you, it's been an excellent discussion with Happy Dussehra and condolences for late Ratan Tata. I'm very lucky that I've got a Cisco artificial intelligence on my side. He has actually summarized each person's views. So I'll just quickly say that it's been an internal discussion. I fully agree with Brigadier Arun Sahgal. He's talked of Depsang and probably Demchok. That problem is going to recede. Chaksam Valley, as another speaker has said, was strategically given away to Pakistan, from Pakistan to China. Therefore, it's a gone case for the time being. We started calling the Indo-Tibetan border the Indo-China border. Therefore, we lost a little acumen on Tibet. Now we came down to Galwan, which actually stopped 40 years of peace and tranquility. Many people believe if that commanding officer had not been killed, it may have reached the crescendo that it did. So that is Arun Sahgal's view, that we have little problem. I think General Amit Sharma has told you a lot about nuclear. I agree with him. It is not likely to be used. But of course, we have to prepare for it. And that's called nuclear deterrence. Therefore, the Navy does your nuclear deterrence. The other speaker, of course, in my artificial intelligence is telling me that talked about multi-domain warfare. Absolutely correct. If today Andamans are attacked, the Navy's landing ships will have to have helicopters and aircraft to support us. The Army will have to have landing forces. So multi-domain warfare has come. But today, as your subject was strategy of the Indo-Pacific, I'm sorry to say that India, the Army and the Air Force has not studied strategy. We were taught in the Navy that you want to woo a girl, you must know what she eats. You must know what perfume she likes. You must like the color she likes. Then go for it. The Indian Navy, sir, has studied Chinese Navy. As somebody said, we cannot compete ship for ship. We cannot compete nuclear weapon to nuclear weapon. We cannot compete GDP of 4 trillion to 18 trillion, but we certainly can compete with strategy. And you'll be very happy if I can say it with my white hair, that the Indian Navy built a strategy. And today, I'm very happy that in 2015, we wanted to build SSNs. The Defense Acquisition Council said, SSNs. If we have SSNs in the Indian Ocean, an American writer has written that China will shit in its pants. But we did not. And SSN got converted to SNBN. So I'll very brief again. Our strategy to build ships, our strategy today, there is a ship in South Africa, there is a ship which just went to Iran, there are ships which are in the Indian Ocean, and I hope you know Malabar is going on. So on the exercise front, our strategy is to grab as much information, as much as we can grab from the United States, from Russia, and we have made friends with everybody. Unlike America, which has built up enemies in the Middle East, one after another. So I'm only going to say the last few words on strategy, that as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned, only thing we have to understand, China has no maritime strength. It is stuck with Taiwan because it's a strait. It is struck with the Renkaku Islands, which is a strait which Japan can threaten them. Russia can threaten them with Sakhalin Island. So the Chinese decided the only way they could have a strategic hold on this 21st century was to get the China Sea, or Dr. Janji, what do you want to call it, that part of the sea they want. And now a new thing is coming. which they said 10 years ago. And those of us who been to China, like me, 9 times, that the code of conduct, as one general has said, you can't believe them. Code of conduct was to keep calm, keep the world calm, that we will discuss the South China Sea problem. Now they're discussing with each country separately. They're coming down to Philippines. They're having action till Philippines say, okay, let's come to some agreement. Many ASEAN countries like Malaysia have said, we have no argument. So thank you very much. Last time I let you down, Dr. Adityanjee, but I'm happy as a naval man, I've had to come into this wonderful army discussion because they've solved their problem. The army is amazing, up to the ridge line. They've got to sort us out. I think they're very capable. My God, the Indian Air Force today is a power to be reckoned with. And Indian Navy is small, the smallest. But today our budget has gone up. Doctor, you'd be very shocked to hear my pension has gone to $2,000. It just shows you, at PPP terms, I'm about $3,000 with all the perks that the British Army left, with all the perks that the Indian Army has given me, with the canteens. I'm a fairly well-off man. Therefore, Finance Minister also is well-off. Thank you very much. I hope I'm not been out of turn.
Thank you, Commodore Ranjit Rai. My next question will go to Lieutenant General Ajai Singh. Lieutenant General Ajay Singh, you headed the Tri-Service Command in Andaman and Nicobar. You know, we are talking about multi-domain awareness, multi-domain warfare. India has made a cyber defense command also. Nobody has talked about space command. You know, China is developing ASAT, kinetic kill vehicles. Just not doing tests, but they are developing, you know, militarization of their space program. Would you like to make any comment upon need on behalf of India to not just have capability, they have done a demonstration by having an ASAT test, but capacity also by having a formalized space command? Lieutenant General Ajay Singh.
Dr. Aditya, there is things you have to clean from between the lines. Everything doesn't have to be said on YouTube. But there were some articles in the papers. We have a very, very advanced space program. And if you have exo-atmospheric capability, which is all kinetic, it's not explosive. When you're talking of Indo-atmospheric, it is explosive, but hitting ICBMs in the exo-atmosphere in a kinetic manner with missiles with actuators of that microsecond capability to vector you onto the incoming missile, then taking out a satellite is a very small thing in comparison. So even when that exo-atmospheric test was done, there were many analysts who brought out, you don't have to demonstrate and talk much. These are things responsible countries in the world have spoken and said, let's not go down that way because it is destructive for everyone. You needn't even have kinetic destruction. We can have EMP-based destruction and other forms which are being written about. And countries who have space capabilities, these are small things to leverage from there.
Thank you, Lieutenant General Ajay Singh. You have given a very wise answer. I just wanted to explore what was the situation about the space issues, because whether we like it or not, whether we behave responsibly or not, it's not us, it's the adversary. And the capacity has to be there, whether we acknowledge it or not. So the message has to go. My last question will go to Major General Amarjit Singh. Major General Amarjit Singh, we did have actually a full 1.5 roundtable discussion on cognitive and information warfare on this platform a couple of months ago. So at least at CSA, we are not kind of ignoring it, but I am actually concerned about one particular aspect in terms of technology, because you expanded quite a lot on technology. As far as my information is concerned, China is developing, using generative AI, robotic soldiers army. And would you do maybe some sort of threat perception and threat assessment as far as that issue is concerned. Because unless you do a formalized threat perception and threat assessment, there cannot be any capacity building.
So instead of doing a threat assessment, I would want to first do a review for you. See, generative AI is not a threat in the area that you mentioned, robotic or autonomous. Generative AI is a major issue in cognitive warfare, information warfare, because I can have Dr. Adityanjee holding a conference with all the panelists and nobody will know that it was not a real conference. Okay, we can have General Ajai, General Amit, myself, and Brigadier Sahgal, and I can show you real world examples of such conferences are currently going on. So we could be having this conference without any of us attending this conference, which means somebody will go and say, okay, all these guys were making these statements, and then it will take off. So the generative part is more in the cognitive area. There is an entire domain of autonomous weapon systems.
Yes.
The AI technologies are not generative; they are very difficult. There is areas of artificial intelligence called planning, and there is a current very rapid progression. In fact, if you are using GPT-4o, they are kind of going in the direction of agentic intelligence, which a collection of agents will do something. Now, that is a kind of thing that could be a threat because there's no commanders on the other side and you are fighting only agents on the other side. And one thing that we do is we try and target the mind of the commander, but no commander exists. And commanders have biases. We know commanders have biases, and that is how we attack the mind of the commander. However, you can bring a unbiased commander only through a agentic concept, but it is still at tactical weapon systems. I answered in the chat. We are at autonomy and agents at the tactical level, nowhere at the strategic and operational level are we even near any agentic capabilities. We are not going to have virtual core commanders for many, many long years to come. They are not going to be virtual divisional commanders. What they can assess and they take decisions as part of the OODA loop, we do not yet have replacement. So I leave it at that. But look at other point which is underlying below that. You can keep doing this, but what about semiconductors? China has tremendous constraints on doing semiconductors. But do we have threats on semiconductors? Yes, we are all based on one company in Netherlands called ASML and the Chinese TSMC making everybody semiconductor. The entire world will come to a standstill if China attacks Taiwan. I mean, you can't imagine the supply chain repercussions that are going to happen the day China attacks Taiwan in the entire technology domain. Now, leave semiconductor. What about power? This kind of AI is requiring. Microsoft has just bought a nuclear reactor for themselves. So look, I mean, it's okay to talk of threat. I am saying everybody has tremendous constraints. We are not late to the game. Europeans have discarded nuclear power. Fortunately, India didn't discard nuclear power. We have been talking of small nuclear reactors. So again, as I said, in some of these areas, we have tremendous strengths and opportunities, certainly not as a disadvantage to the Chinese. Semiconductor, we now get fabrication starting in next 5 or 10 years, we'll get semiconductors or military systems capable enough. So we are okay. There's not a huge, but I would say rather than the threat, I'll say there are more opportunities here. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Major General Amarjit Singh. Just one editorial comment. Not entire Europe has given up on nuclear power. France still gets its 68% of power from nuclear sources, and they are not willing to give it up. Arriva is one of the upcoming, nuclear power corporations. So entire Europe is not the same.
There are certain countries have given up who are on the front line. France hasn't given up. I'm aware of that. So the point was, people have been discarding nuclear power for the last 20 years, and now suddenly everybody realized, no, we have to go back to nuclear power. So that was the point.
Well taken. Well taken. We are running out of time. It was a wonderful roundtable discussion. My thanks to Brigadier Arun Sahgal, who is our mentor. He is one of our member of the International Advisory Board. Lieutenant General Amit Sharma, who is so modest. In American tradition, I addressed him as General Sharma because anyone with a general ranking, whether you are Major General, Lieutenant General, or General, in United States is addressed as General. And you wanted to correct me by saying that he is just a Lieutenant General, not a General. So my thanks to Lieutenant General Amit Sharma, Lieutenant General Ajai Singh, and Major General Amarjit Singh for this wonderful discussion. I'm also thankful to some of the members of our audience, Air Commodore Manmohan Chaturvedi and Commodore Ranjit Rai, to bring a different perspective belonging to different services. And lastly, my thanks to the audience members who sat through this 1.5 hour discussion in good numbers. And finally, my thanks to Team CSA, Mr. Ripudaman Pachauri and Mr. Rajiv Verma. They are pillars of my support, my right and left hand, that make these kind of discussions possible, these kind of events possible. So thank you to Team CSA for wonderful job they have done. And we are already 1 minute above the time. So thank you very much indeed to everyone. To those people who are based in US, kindly support and donate to CSA because without your support, we cannot carry this kind of work. We are a non-profit organization. We don't seek actually solicit donations from outside US. We are just making this appeal to people who are based in US because we are a US based non-profit organization. Thank you very much indeed. This program will be available as a content on our YouTube channel and our website. Namaskar. Good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Very much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very